Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash inherited Aura Guardian powers and got a harem of all aura-sensitive girls. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The tower and the spark. The wind howling around the spire of the Tower of Mastery didn't sound like wind anymore. To Ash Ketchum, it sounded like a conversation, a chaotic, rushing dialogue between the sky and the sea. He stood on the highest observation platform, eyes closed, boots planted firmly on the stone. He wasn't shivering, though the Colossian winter bit through the fabric of his coat. At 19, Ash had grown into his frame. The jagged lightning bolt scars on his cheeks, once markers of youthful exuberance, now looked like what they were: marks of a veteran. "You're dragging your left heel," Ash said softly. His voice was low, barely carrying over the gale, but the creature behind him heard it. Lucario, standing 4 meters away, paused mid-motion. The aura appendage behind the jackal's head twitched. He hadn't moved a muscle, yet his partner knew his stance was off by a fraction of an inch. "Less than I am correcting it, greater than," Lucario projected, the mental voice sharp and metallic. "Less than, but you were distracted, Master. The waves below are turbulent. So are you. Greater than." "I'm not distracted. I'm expanding." Ash opened his eyes. They weren't just brown anymore. In the twilight gloom, they held a faint, iridescent shimmer, like oil on water. He raised a hand, palm open. He didn't call for an attack. He didn't shout a command. He simply pushed his will outward. The air in front of him distorted. A sphere of blue energy materialized, not from Lucario, but from the empty space between them. It hummed with a terrifyingly low frequency, vibrating the loose gravel on the floor. "Too unstable," a female voice called out. Ash let the energy dissipate, the blue light fracturing into sparks that vanished before they hit the ground. He turned to see Karina leaning against the archway of the tower stairs. The Shaller City gym leader had traded her roller skates for combat boots, her blonde hair tied back in a severe, practical knot. She looked tired, but her grin was as sharp as ever. "Grandfather says if you blow a hole in the roof again, you're fixing it with a trowel and mortar," she said, walking over to join him at the edge. "It wasn't a hole," Ash replied, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "It was a ventilation adjustment." Karina laughed, bumping her shoulder against his arm. The contact sent a jolt through him, not static electricity, but something warmer. A recognition. Over the last 6 months of hiding here, training in the ancient ways of the Aura Guardians, that sensation had grown stronger. It was like standing next to a furnace in a cold room. "You've hit a wall, Ash," she said, her tone shifting to serious. She looked out over the dark ocean. "Your reserves are massive. Bigger than grandfather's. Bigger than mine. But you're trying to control a tsunami with a spoon. You need to stop thinking like a trainer and start thinking like a conduit." "I've been a trainer my whole life, Karina. Old habits." "And look where that got you," she murmured, glancing at the scars on his hands. "Burns from legendary fire, cuts from steel. The world keeps throwing gods at you, Ash. Eventually, one of them isn't going to blink." Ash gripped the stone railing. The stone cracked audibly under his fingers, crumbling into dust. He pulled his hand back, sighing. "That's why I'm here," he said, "so I don't break when they hit me." "No." Karina turned to face him, her gray eyes searching his. "You're here because you're afraid you'll break them." Before Ash could answer, the air pressure dropped. It wasn't the weather. The wind didn't stop, the sound of it simply ceased. The roar of the ocean was severed, replaced by a high-pitched, nauseating whine that drilled into the base of the skull. Lucario growled, dropping into a combat crouch, teeth bared. "Less than dampeners, greater than." Ash spun around, his senses screaming. The aura in the air, usually a vibrant tapestry of life, had turned gray and sludge-like. He reached for the Pokeball at his belt, his fingers brushing the shrunken metal, but he felt nothing. The connection to the Pokemon inside was muffled, like shouting underwater. "We have company," Ash said, his voice icy calm. "How did they get past the perimeter sensors?" Karina snapped, her body already moving into a martial arts stance. "They didn't bypass them. They turned them off." Ash sprinted toward the stairs, Karina on his heels. "They're here for me." The courtyard of the Tower of Mastery was a scene of silent chaos. Gurkhan, the Mega Evolution Guru, was on one knee, his Mega Alakazam struggling to maintain its form. Surrounding them were 12 figures clad in matte black tactical armor. They wore no insignias, their faces obscured by sleek, faceless helmets glowing with a single vertical red slit. They moved with unnatural precision, wielding staffs that crackled with a violet, corrupt energy. "Submit," the leader of the squad intoned. His voice was synthesized, stripped of humanity. By order of the Nullification Bureau, all aura-active entities are to be detained for processing. Gurkhan spat blood onto the cobblestones. "The League has no jurisdiction here, puppet." "The League is obsolete," the soldier replied. He raised a heavy rifle, aiming it not at Gurkhan, but at the struggling Alakazam. "Purge the variable." Boom. A shockwave of dust erupted between the soldier and the Pokémon. The soldier went flying backward, skidding 10 meters across the courtyard before crashing into a stone pillar. Ash stood in the center of the crater, his coat billowing in the returning wind. His hand was outstretched, wreathed in a visible aura that looked less like light and more like blue flame. "Step away from him," Ash commanded. He didn't shout, but the words carried the weight of a gavel strike. The squad shifted instantly, 11 rifles turning toward Ash. "Target identified. Subject Alpha," the synthesized voice droned. "Threat level, catastrophic. Engage with null-type munitions." "Ash, get back," Gurkhan yelled, struggling to stand. "They're weapons. They eat energy. You can't block them." "I'm not blocking," Ash muttered. He moved. To the soldiers, he must have been a blur. To Karina, who leapt from the balcony above to join the fray, he was a revelation. Ash didn't run. He flowed. He ducked under a violet beam of energy that hissed as it burned the air where his head had been. He closed the distance to the nearest soldier, grabbing the barrel of the rifle. With a sharp twist, the reinforced metal sheared in half. Ash followed up with a palm strike to the soldier's chest plate. Impact. The soldier didn't just fall. The armor crumpled inwards as if hit by a wrecking ball. The man was launched into his squad mates, knocking 3 of them over like bowling pins. "Lucario, Bone Rush. Watch the left flank," Ash ordered. Lucario materialized from the shadows, a staff of pure energy forming in his paws. But as the jackal swung, a soldier activated a device on his belt. A pulse of gray distortion rippled out. Lucario's bone staff flickered and vanished. The Pokémon stumbled, clutching his chest, gasping for air. "The dampeners," Karina hissed, sliding next to Ash. She kicked a soldier in the helmet, the impact ringing like a bell, but her movements were sluggish. "They're suffocating the Pokémon. They can't draw energy." "Then we act as the battery," Ash said. He grabbed Karina's hand. It wasn't a romantic gesture, it was a tactical link. The moment their skin touched, Karina gasped. She felt it, a torrent of raw, unrefined power flooding from Ash into her. It was terrifying and intoxicating. His aura wasn't a calm pool, it was a storm, raging and desperate for an outlet. "Take it," Ash gritted out, his eyes glowing violently. "Use me." Karina didn't hesitate. She channeled the surge, her body glowing with a golden shroud. She lunged forward, moving faster than she ever had in her life. She struck a soldier with a high jump kick that shattered his helmet and sent him flying over the courtyard wall and into the ocean below. "Flank them. Don't let them regroup," Ash yelled, diving into the melee. He was fighting differently now. He wasn't just directing, he was the weapon. A soldier swung a stun baton at his head. Ash caught the wrist, his grip crushing the gauntlet, and threw the man into another attacker. He spun, sweeping the legs of a third, and blasted him point blank with a pulse of force from his palm. But there were too many of them, and they were adapting. "Convergence formation," the squad leader barked. The remaining 6 soldiers slammed their staffs into the ground. A hexagonal barrier of violet light sprang up, trapping Ash and Karina inside. The air inside the barrier immediately grew heavy, hot, and suffocating. "It's a siphon," Karina choked out, dropping to one knee. Her golden glow faded. "They're draining us." Ash felt it too. It felt like hooks sinking into his skin, pulling the life out of his veins. His vision blurred. He saw Pikachu, still on the balcony, trying to charge a thunderbolt but only managing a few sparks. "You are an anomaly," the leader said, stepping up to the barrier. An error in the equation. Errors must be deleted. Ash looked at Karina. She was pale, her breathing ragged. The dampening field was hitting her harder because she had opened herself up to his power. If this continued, she wouldn't just pass out, her heart would stop. Something inside Ash snapped. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was the primal, lizard brain instinct of a creature cornered. The sovereign aspect of his soul, dormant for years, woke up and looked at the cage it was in. No. Ash straightened up. The veins in his neck bulged. The blue aura around him turned white hot. Ash, stop. Gherkin yelled from outside the barrier. You'll burn out your life force. Ash didn't hear him. He looked at the leader of the squad. You want my energy? Ash whispered. The sound resonated, vibrating the violet walls of the cage. Take it. He slammed both hands against the barrier. He didn't push, he detonated. A pillar of pure, blinding white light erupted from the Tower of Mastery, piercing the cloud layer and illuminating the night sky for miles. The sound was deafening. A crack of thunder that shattered every window in the tower. The violet barrier didn't just break, it disintegrated. The backlash hit the soldiers like a physical wall. Their armor short-circuited, sparks flying as they were thrown backward, unconscious before they hit the ground. Ash stood amidst the smoking ruin of the courtyard. His coat was singed, his breathing heaving like a bellows. The white light faded, leaving only the soft, blue glow of his eyes. He swayed. Ash. Karina caught him before he hit the stones. She struggled under his weight, lowering him gently. His skin was burning hot to the touch. Idiot, she whispered, her voice trembling. Reckless, stupid, incredible idiot. Ash blinked, his vision clearing. He looked up at her. Is everyone okay? Everyone except you, she snapped, though her hand lingered tenderly on his cheek. She looked around at the unconscious soldiers, then at her grandfather, who was staring at Ash with a mixture of awe and terror. Gherkin limped over, leaning heavily on his staff. He looked at the shattered remains of the tactical armor, specifically at a piece of debris bearing a jagged, stylized N. The Nullification Bureau, Gherkin murmured. I thought they were a myth. A Black Ops ghost story from the old war. They're real, Ash rasped, accepting water from Lucario, who had recovered enough to limp over. And they know who I am. They know what you are, Gherkin corrected grimly. Ash, you cannot stay here. This was a scouting party. Next time, they will bring an army, or worse, they will bring the Slayers. Ash sat up, wincing as his muscles protested. He looked at the destruction he had caused. He looked at Karina, seeing the bruise forming on her arm where the dampening field had bit into her. He had done that. His presence had brought this war to their doorstep. I'm leaving tonight, Ash said. He stood up, his legs shaking but holding. I'll pack my bag, Karina said immediately. Ash turned to her. No, you're staying. This is your gym, your family. Karina stepped into his space, grabbing the lapels of his coat and yanking him down until their noses almost touched. Her eyes were blazing. Listen to me, Ketchum. You just linked your aura with mine. You felt it. That wasn't a one-time transfer. It's a resonance. She let go, but didn't step back. You opened a door. You don't get to shut it just to play the noble martyr. If you leave alone, you'll be dead in a week. You have no control, no subtlety, and now, a giant target painted on your back. Ash held her gaze. He wanted to argue, to tell her it was too dangerous, but he could still feel her in the back of his mind, a steady, bright warmth against the cold void of the dampeners. She was right. He had felt stronger when she was channeling him. The Bureau hunts in packs, Karina said, crossing her arms. So do Lucario's. You need a vanguard, Ash. Ash looked at Gherkin. The old master sighed, looking at his granddaughter, then at the boy who had just nuked a special forces squad with his bare hands. Go, Gherkin said. But do not run blindly. If the Bureau is active, they will have sensors tracking high-yield aura signatures. You need to cloak yourselves. How? Ash asked. You need a psychic anchor, Gherkin explained. Someone who can mask the noise your soul makes. Someone who understands the frequency of the mind as well as the body. Ash's eyes widened. A memory surfaced. A tower in the mist, a golden eye, a girl who could speak to him without opening her mouth. Annabelle, Ash said. The frontier brain? Karina asked. She's the strongest telepath I know, Ash nodded, his mind already shifting into tactical gear. If anyone can hide us, it's her. Ash whistled for Charizard. The dragon, who had been circling high above to avoid the dampeners, descended with a heavy thud, growling at the unconscious soldiers. Ash turned to Karina. Pack light, we leave in 10 minutes. Karina grinned, the tension breaking. Way ahead of you, Sovereign. As she ran inside to grab her gear, Ash walked to the edge of the tower. He looked down at the unconscious leader of the hit squad. He knelt, grabbing the man's helmet and ripping it off. The face beneath was unremarkable, but the eyes were open, staring blankly. A cybernetic implant on the temple sparked. Tell your masters, Ash whispered to the dazed soldier, that the test is over. He stood up, the wind catching his coat. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They wanted a weapon. He would show them what a weapon looked like. We aren't running, Ash said to the night air, as Charizard roared and flames curled from its maw. We're hunting. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2, The Maiden of the Mist. The air above the Hoenn region was thin, biting, and smelled of ozone. Ash sat near the base of Charizard's neck, his legs dangling over the side as the dragon banked through a cloud bank. The rhythmic thumping of leathery wings was the only sound in the world. He looked at his hands. The bandages Karina had applied 2 hours ago were already loose, his skin humming with a restorative energy that knit the flesh back together faster than natural biology allowed. But the ache in his bones remained. Using aura as a blunt instrument had a cost. You're brooding, a voice shouted over the wind. Ash turned slightly. Karina was seated behind him, her arms wrapped securely around his waist to anchor herself. She wasn't wearing her helmet. Her blonde hair whipped violently around her face, but she looked comfortable, like she belonged in the sky. I'm thinking, Ash corrected. Same thing with you. Usually leads to explosions. She leaned forward, resting her chin on his shoulder, her voice dropping to a more intimate volume near his ear. Your heart rate is still too high, Ash. You're expecting another ambush up here. Vance. The man on the comms. He knew our flight path before we even took off. We aren't safe until we're invisible. We're almost there, Karina said, tightening her grip around his midsection. The contact was grounding. It reminded Ash that he wasn't just a weapon made of energy, he was a man made of meat and bone. The battle frontier is strictly neutral territory. Even the League hesitates to send spooks in there. Charizard rumbled low in his throat, banking sharply to the left. Below them, the dense canopy of the Hoenn wilderness gave way to a valley swallowed by a thick, unnatural fog. Piercing through the mist like a spear was the dark silhouette of the battle tower. Down, boy, Ash murmured, patting the dragon's scales. They descended rapidly, the temperature rising as they pierced the fog layer. The mist was heavy, clinging to clothes and dampening sound. Charizard landed with a heavy thud in a clearing about a mile from the tower's entrance. Ash slid off, boots sinking into wet moss. He scanned the tree line instantly. Clear, he said, though his hand hovered near Lucario's Pokeball. Karina hopped down, stretching her legs. Creepy, she noted, looking at the swirling gray vapor. I can't sense anything past 10 feet. It's like the air is dead. It's not dead. It's quieted. Ash walked forward, the mist parting around him as if repelled by his body heat. She knows we're here. They moved through the forest in silence. The deeper they went, the denser the fog became. It wasn't natural weather. It was a psychic shroud, a deliberate barrier meant to confuse navigation systems and wandering trainers. Suddenly, a roar shattered the silence. It was a wet, gurgling sound of pure rage. Ahead, through a break in the trees, they saw a small lake. The water was churning violently. A Gyarados, massive and scarred, was thrashing in the shallows, smashing its tail against the rocks. Its eyes were red, bloodshot with madness. Ash moved instantly. It's rampaging. Lucario, let's. Wait. Karina grabbed his arm. Look. Ash paused. Standing on a large, flat rock at the edge of the water, mere inches from the thrashing Leviathan, was a woman. She wore a simple suit of lilac and black, her lilac hair cut short. She didn't flinch as the Gyarados screamed in her face, spraying her with water. She didn't reach for a Pokeball. She simply stood there, hands clasped behind her back, watching the monster with an expression of profound, devastating sadness. Annabelle, Ash breathed. The Gyarados reared back, preparing a hyperbeam. The energy gathered in its maw, a sphere of destruction capable of vaporizing the rock she stood on. "Stop," Annabelle whispered. She didn't shout. The word didn't travel through the air. It traveled through the mind. Ash felt it, a gentle, velvet pressure against his frontal lobe. The Gyarados froze. The orange energy in its mouth flickered and died. Annabelle raised a hand, palm up. "The hook is gone, little one. The pain is a memory. Let it drift." The massive serpent shuddered. The red madness in its eyes faded, replaced by confusion, and then, exhaustion. It lowered its head slowly until its snout touched Annabelle's palm. She stroked the rough blue scales, closing her eyes. "Sleep," she projected. The Gyarados slumped into the water, floating peacefully, its breathing steady. Annabelle turned around. Her eyes were a striking, deep violet, and they locked onto Ash immediately. There was no surprise in her gaze. "You're loud, Ash Ketchum," she said, her voice echoing slightly as if coming from everywhere at once. "Your soul is screaming so loud I heard you from Kalos." Ash stepped out of the tree line, Karina flanking him. "Annabelle, we need help." "I know," she said. She stepped off the rock, walking across the surface of the water as if it were solid ground, a subtle application of psychic levitation. She reached the shore and stood before them. She was smaller than Ash remembered, but her presence was immense. The Nullification Bureau. Men with machines that eat miracles. Karina blinked. "You know them?" "I feel the void they create," Annabelle said, her expression darkening. "When they kill a psychic type, it's not just death, it's silence. I felt 3 go silent this week." She looked at Ash, tilting her head. "And they want to silence you." "They tried," Ash said grimly. "I need to disappear, Annabelle. Gherkin said you could mask my signature." Annabelle stepped closer, invading his personal space. She reached up, placing a cool hand on his forehead. Ash flinched, but didn't pull away. "Less than chaotic, greater than," her voice spoke in his mind. "Less than you were a bonfire in a dark room. No wonder they found you. You have no shielding, greater than." "Can you fix it?" Karina asked, her hand resting on her hip, watching the telepath with a hint of wariness. Annabelle dropped her hand, looking at Karina. A faint smile touched her lips. "The Vanguard. His sword and shield. You protect his body well, Karina. But his mind is a fortress with the drawbridge down." "Let's go inside," Annabelle said aloud. "The fog is thick, but the hunters have eyes that see through water." The interior of the battle tower was dark. The facility was technically closed for the season, the grand lobby shadowy and silent. Dust motes danced in the beams of light cutting through the high windows. "I have a localized dampening field in the upper sanctum," Annabelle explained as they walked toward the elevators. "Once we are there, I can begin the weaving process to cloak your aura." "How long will it take?" Ash asked. "To weave a permanent cloak? Days. Maybe weeks. You have to learn to suppress your own output, Ash. I can only guide you." Ash stopped walking. The elevator doors were open, but the darkness inside the shaft seemed too dark. "Ash." Karina stopped a few paces ahead. "Get back," Ash whispered. Click. The sound was mechanical, tiny. Suddenly, the lobby exploded with smoke. Canisters dropped from the ceiling, rafters hissed, spewing a thick, black gas that smelled of sulfur and copper. "Contact!" Karina yelled, dropping into a stance. "Annabelle, behind you!" Ash lunged, shoving the salon maiden aside just as a silver blur sliced through the air where her neck had been. A monofilament wire whip. Ash rolled, coming up on his feet, but he couldn't see. The smoke was chemically treated. It stung his eyes, forcing them shut. "Sensors are down." Karina shouted from somewhere to his left. "I can't track them." "Less than they are using acoustic dampeners," greater than Annabelle's voice rang in Ash's head, urgent and sharp. "Less than sound is useless. Sight is useless. Greater than." "Who is it?" Ash growled, holding his breath to avoid inhaling the gas. "Less than one signature. Human. Heavily augmented. He has no aura. It's like tracking a ghost. Greater than." A swish of air. Ash threw up a forearm instinctively. A blade slashed across his sleeve, cutting deep into the flesh. He grunted, lashing out with a kick, but hit nothing but smoke. Subject Alpha located, a whispery, distorted voice echoed from the shadows. It wasn't synthesized like the soldiers. This voice sounded human, but bored, blind and flailing. Disappointing. Show yourself. Karina roared. She unleashed a vacuum wave, blowing a hole in the smoke, but the cloud rushed back in instantly. Less than Ash, greater than Annabelle's mental voice became a singular point of focus. Less than stop looking with your eyes. Stop listening with your ears. Link with me. Greater than. Ash stood still, blood dripping from his arm. I can't see him, Annabelle. He has no aura. Less than he has intent. Malice has a frequency. I will be your eyes, greater than. Ash took a breath, inhaling the acrid smoke, and exhaled slowly. He dropped his guard. He stood perfectly still in the swirling darkness. Less than 3 o'clock. Low. Greater than Ash didn't think. He snapped a backhand strike to his right, waist height. Crack. His fist connected with ceramic armor. The assassin grunted, surprised. Lucky shot, the voice hissed. Less than no luck. Resonance. Greater than Annabelle's mind was a cool stream of data flowing into Ash. He could feel where she was. Crouched behind a pillar. He could feel Karina, a bright, anxious fire near the entrance. And he could feel the assassin, a void, a cold spot moving rapidly across the ceiling. Less than 12 o'clock. Coming down. Greater than Ash sidestepped. A blade slammed into the floor tiles where he had just been standing. Ash grabbed the empty air above the blade, his hand closing around an invisible wrist. Gotcha, Ash growled. He pulled, slamming the assassin into the ground. But the man was fluid. He twisted out of the grip, his suit greased or coated in something frictionless. He flipped away, vanishing into the smoke again. You rely on the girl, the assassin taunted. Kill the telepath, blind the beast. Ash felt the cold spot shift. The assassin was ignoring him. He was rushing toward the pillar, toward Annabelle. No, Karina shouted, rushing forward, but she was too far away. Ash reached out. He didn't run. He didn't have time. He needed to see. He needed to see. The desperation triggered the lock in his brain. The same lock that had broken at the Tower of Mastery. Open. The world inverted. The black smoke turned into transparent gray wire frames. The walls became lines of static. And there, rushing toward Annabelle, was a figure. Not a void anymore. Ash could see the nervous system, the electrical impulses firing in the assassin's muscles, the battery pack on his back. Ash saw the aura of the world. Less than you see him, greater than Annabelle realized, her mental voice awestruck. Ash extended his hand. He didn't fire a blast. He reached out with his aura and gripped the assassin's own bioelectricity. Sit, Ash commanded. He clenched his fist. The assassin froze in midair 10 feet from Annabelle. His body went rigid, seizing up as if he'd been tased. He dropped to the floor with a heavy clatter, twitching uncontrollably. The smoke began to clear as the ventilation systems finally kicked in. Ash stood in the center of the lobby, his hand still outstretched. His eyes were glowing a brilliant, solid blue, no pupils visible. Karina stared at him. Ash, what did you just do? Ash lowered his hand. The glow faded, revealing tired brown eyes. He slumped slightly, the adrenaline crash hitting him. I grabbed him, Ash muttered, from the inside. Annabelle stepped out from behind the pillar. She looked at the twitching assassin. A man in a sleek, gray stealth suit, holding a monofilament katana. She looked at Ash. That was aura sight, she said softly. But, tactile. You didn't just perceive him. You interfered with his nervous system. That isn't supposed to be possible for a human. Ash walked over to the assassin. He kicked the katana away. The man was conscious, staring up at Ash with terrified eyes. Who sent you? Ash asked. The Inquisitor, the assassin wheezed. Vance. He said you were a battery. He didn't say you were the gun. Ash looked at Karina. Tie him up. Karina moved efficiently, using the assassin's own wire whip to bind his hands and feet. She hauled him up, checking him for suicide pills or trackers. Tracker is destroyed, she noted, crushing a device on his collar. He's secure. Ash turned to Annabelle. The salon maiden was still watching him, her expression unreadable. You saved my life, Ash said. Without your guidance, he would have cut me down. And without your power, my guidance would have been a eulogy, Annabelle replied. She walked over to him, reaching out to touch the cut on his arm. A soft pink light emanated from her fingers. Heal pulse. The skin knitted together. This escalates things, Annabelle said. If they are sending mage killers, they are desperate to stop you before you reach full potential. Then we need to move fast, Ash said. Can you cloak us while we travel? Annabelle nodded. I can maintain a low-level psychic shroud. It will keep satellites and long-range scanners from picking up your aura signature. But if we run into another squad, we fight, Karina finished, tightening her gloves. She looked at Ash, her eyes gleaming with a mix of pride and something darker. Especially if he can do that again. I don't want to do that again, Ash admitted, looking at his hands. It felt invasive. It's war, Ash, Annabelle said gently. Invasive is better than dead. She turned toward the elevators. Come. I have a private shuttle on the roof. We can't stay here. The Bureau will know their agent failed within the hour. Where are we going? Karina asked, hoisting her pack. Ash looked north. He felt a pull, not a tactical one, but a historical one. A sense that the answers weren't in fighting, but in understanding what this power actually was. Sinnoh, Ash said. The Celestic ruins. Annabelle paused. Cynthia? She knows the history, Ash said. She knows the myths of the king who controlled the giants. If I'm turning into whatever this is, I need to know why. Annabelle smiled, a genuine, warm smile that lit up the gloomy lobby. Then we go to the north, she said. I haven't seen Cynthia in years. It will be an interesting reunion. As they walked toward the elevators, leaving the incapacitated assassin for the Battle Frontier security to find, Ash felt the dynamic shift. Karina was on his right, radiating physical strength and heat. Annabelle was on his left, a cool, mental river of calm. The static noise in his head, the constant pressure of the aura, quieted. For the first time in months, Ash Ketchum didn't feel like he was exploding. He felt balanced. Let's go, Ash said. The elevator doors closed, sealing the trio inside as they began their ascent. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Myths of the Frozen North. The cold in Sinnoh was different from the cold in Kalos. In Kalos, the winter was wet and biting. In Sinnoh, it was ancient. The air felt like it had been frozen for 1,000 years, preserving everything in a state of silent suspension. The group had landed in Snowpoint City under the cover of a blizzard. Annabelle's psychic shroud kept the city's sensors from flagging Ash's aura, but it couldn't stop the wind from whipping at their faces as they trudged toward the temple district. Ash walked point, wrapped in a heavy parka, his face obscured by a scarf. Karina walked beside him, her movements stiff from the cold but energetic. Annabelle drifted slightly behind, her eyes scanning the environment not with sight, but with her mind. She's here, Annabelle projected, her voice clear in their heads over the howling wind. Less than inside the library archive. Greater than. Good, Ash grunted. I can't feel my toes. They reached the heavy oak doors of the Snowpoint archive. Ash pushed them open, and they stumbled into the warmth of the vestibule. The silence was jarring after the roar of the storm. The main hall was vast, filled with towering shelves of books and ancient stone tablets. At the far end, sitting at a large wooden table covered in maps and scrolls, was a woman with long blonde hair cascading over a black coat. Cynthia did not look up as they approached. You're 3 days early, the champion said, turning a page of a crumbling book. Or perhaps 3 years late, depending on how you look at the prophecy. Ash pulled down his scarf. It's good to see you, Cynthia. Cynthia finally looked up. Her gray eyes landed on Ash, then drifted to Karina, and finally settled on Annabelle. She stood, her presence dominating the room despite her relaxed posture. Ash Ketchum, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. The boy who attracts trouble like a magnet. And now, you bring an aura guardian and a frontier brain to my library. She walked around the table, leaning against the edge. You've grown, Ash, and you've become dense. Dense? Karina bristled. His aura, Cynthia clarified, tapping her own temple. It's compressed. Like a star trying to collapse into a black hole. It's polite of you to cloak it, Annabelle, but I can still feel the gravity. We need answers, Ash said, stepping forward. He placed his hands on the table, ignoring the priceless artifacts. The Nullification Bureau. They called me Subject Alpha. They have tech that eats energy, and they're scared of me. Cynthia's smile vanished. She gestured to the chairs. Sit. She pulled a large, stone tablet from a pile. It depicted a crude carving of a human figure standing atop a mountain, surrounded by giants. Regirock, Regice, Registeel. The King of Celestic, Cynthia began. The myths say that before Pokeballs, before the League, there were humans who could command Pokemon simply by resonating with them. They didn't capture them, they ruled them. Aura Guardians, Karina said. More than that, Cynthia corrected. Guardians serve. The king commanded. His voice could calm storms. His anger could wake mountains. She looked at Ash pointedly. The Bureau isn't afraid you're a guardian, Ash. They're afraid you're a sovereign. I don't want to rule anyone, Ash said firmly. Power doesn't care what you want, Cynthia replied sharply. It cares about capacity. And right now, you have the capacity to destabilize the entire geopolitical landscape. Suddenly, the lights in the library flickered. Annabelle stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. They found us. Ash spun around. How? You've been shielding us. Not a sensor, Annabelle said, her eyes widening. A traitor. Someone inside the city grid just flagged our location manually. Boom. The front doors of the archive were blown inward. Splinters of wood rained down like shrapnel. Through the smoke, figures emerged. Not the tactical squads this time. These were different. They wore white robes over biomechanical armor, their faces hidden by hoods. They looked like tech priests. The Inquisitor sends his regards, a voice echoed. It was Vance. He walked in, flanked by 4 massive, quadrupedal machines. They looked like Genesect, but stripped of their organic parts. Pure, cold steel and cannon fire. Champion Cynthia, Vance said smoothly, stopping 10 meters away. He was a tall man, gaunt, with spectacles that hid cruel, intelligent eyes. Harboring a fugitive is a Class A felony. Even for you. Vance, Cynthia said, her voice dropping to a dangerous octave. Get out of my library before I bury you under it. The boy comes with us, Vance said, adjusting his glasses. He is a biological weapon. A resonance cascade waiting to happen. Ash stepped in front of Cynthia. I'm right here, Vance. Subject Alpha, Vance nodded, and the harem. How quaint. Karina snarled, reaching for her mega glove. I'm going to break his jaw. Wait, Ash said. He felt something. A rumble deep in the earth, below the floorboards. Cynthia, Ash whispered. What is under this building? Cynthia's eyes widened. The catacombs, the temple foundation. Something is waking up, Ash said. Vance smiled. He pulled a remote from his robes. We know. Why do you think we chose this location for the ambush? We didn't just come to capture you, Ash. We came to test you. Vance pressed a button. The floor beneath them exploded. It wasn't an explosive charge. The stone itself heaved upward. Massive stone fists punched through the archive floor, sending books and shelves flying. Regigigas, Cynthia shouted, releasing her Garchomp instantly. The colossal Pokémon rose from the depths, shaking off centuries of dust. But something was wrong. Its eyes weren't blinking their usual slow pattern. They were flashing red, rapid and erratic. On its chest, a device similar to the dampeners was clamped tight. A control collar? Karina gasped. They're driving it insane. It's a stress test, Vance called out calmly, retreating behind his machine guards. If you are the sovereign, boy, then prove it. Control the king of giants. Or die. Regigigas roared, a sound like grinding tectonic plates, and swung a massive arm. Garchomp, Dragon Rush. Cynthia commanded. The dragon slammed into the giant's chest, pushing it back, but Regigigas barely flinched. It grabbed Garchomp midair and slammed the dragon into a bookshelf. Lucario, Aura Sphere. Ash yelled. Karina, go for the legs. The battle was chaos. The 4 Genesect machines opened fire with Technoblast lasers, pinning Ash and the girls down. Cynthia was busy trying to keep Garchomp from being crushed. Ash ducked behind a fallen pillar. Annabelle, can you reach its mind? It's too chaotic. Annabelle shouted, pressing her hands to her temples. The collar is feeding it pure pain signals. I can't break through. We have to destroy the collar, Ash said. He looked at the giant. It was rampaging, tearing the library apart. Cover me, Ash said. Ash, you can't get close to that thing, Karina yelled, deflecting a laser blast with her Lucario's bone rush. Just do it, Ash broke cover. He sprinted across the debris-strewn floor. Lasers strafed the ground at his heels. Cover him, Cynthia ordered. Melodic, Hydro Pump, Garchomp, Sandstorm. The champion's Pokémon created a wall of water and sand, obscuring Ash from the machines. Karina and Lucario leapt into the air, launching a barrage of aura spheres to distract the Regigigas. Ash slid under the giant's swinging fist. He was beneath it now. He jumped, grabbing onto the mossy vines hanging from its body. He climbed, hauling himself up the heaving chest of the Titan. The collar was right there, a pulsing metal ring clamped onto the central orbs. Regigigas sensed him. It grabbed at its chest, massive fingers closing around Ash. Ash gasped as the pressure crushed the air from his lungs. He was pinned against the giant's stone skin. Ash! The girls screamed in unison. Vance watched with clinical interest. Let's see if he pops. Ash struggled. His vision was fading. The pain was immense. But in the pain, he found the frequency. The collar was emitting a noise, a screeching, electronic hate. Ash closed his eyes. He didn't try to fight the giant's strength. He reached out with his aura, bypassing the physical world. He dove into the Regigigas's mind. It was a storm of agony, less than quiet, greater than Ash roared mentally. It wasn't a request. It was an order. His aura flared, not blue, but gold, the color of the sun. It surged from his body, overriding the collar's signal. Regigigas froze. The red lights on its face stopped flashing. Ash opened his eyes. He was still pinned in the giant's grip, but the pressure had stopped. He looked directly into the golem's face. Sleep, Ash whispered. He placed his hand on the collar. He didn't crush it. He unlocked it. With a pulse of precise aura, he fried the circuitry. The collar clicked and fell off, clattering to the floor below. Regigigas groaned, a low, confused sound. Slowly, gently, it lowered Ash to the ground. The giant looked at Vance. Then it looked at Ash. It knelt. The massive titan bent its knee, lowering its head in submission to the boy standing before it. Silence descended on the ruined library. Even the machine guards stopped firing, their logic processors unable to compute the scenario. Vance's smile was gone. He looked pale. Impossible, he whispered. He didn't catch it. He allied with it. Ash turned to face Vance. He wasn't breathing hard this time. He stood tall, flanked by Karina, Annabelle, and Cynthia. Behind him, the Regigigas stood up, turning its massive bulk toward the Bureau forces. You wanted a test, Vance? Ash called out. You passed. I'm awake now. Retreat, Vance ordered instantly. Scrub the data. Get us out of here. The white-robed figures threw flash grenades. The machines fired a volley of smoke to cover their escape. By the time the air cleared, they were gone. Ash sagged, his knees giving way. Karina was there instantly, catching him. I've got you. Cynthia walked over, recalling her Pokémon. She looked at the Regigigas, which was slowly trudging back toward the hole in the floor, returning to its slumber now that the irritant was gone. She looked at Ash, who was leaning on Karina, with Annabelle checking his vitals. The Sovereign, Cynthia murmured. She looked at the two women fussing over him. She saw the fierce protectiveness in Karina's eyes, the deep psychic bond in Annabelle's. Cynthia smiled, a predatory, excited smile. Well, she said, brushing dust off her coat, it seems I have a new research project, and a new team. Ash looked up at her. You're coming with us? You think I'm letting you leave with all this data walking around on two legs? Cynthia chuckled. She stepped closer, tilting Ash's chin up with a gloved finger. Besides, someone has to handle the politics while you handle the gods. And I am very good at politics. She turned to Annabelle and Karina. We need a secure location. Somewhere off the grid. I have a facility in the Sevi Islands. Vance will find us eventually, Annabelle warned. Let him, Ash said, his voice regaining its strength. He looked at the hole where Regigigas had disappeared. Next time, we won't be the ones defending. The group stood amidst the ruins of history. The dynamic had shifted again. It was no longer a flight for survival. It was the formation of a war council. Ash Ketchum. The vanguard, Karina. The anchor, Annabelle. The strategist, Cynthia. Let's go, Ash said. We have a war to win. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The artificial god the stormy sea lived up to its name. 60 miles off the coast of the Sevi Islands, the ocean was a churning cauldron of black water and white foam. Rain hammered against the sleek, metallic hull of the stealth transport Cynthia had requisitioned. Inside, the silence was absolute. Ash sat in the center of the hold, checking the straps on his combat boots. He didn't look up when the red warning light pulsed, signaling they were approaching the drop zone. He didn't need to. He could feel the facility ahead. A cold, cancerous void in the natural aura of the ocean. Heart rate is steady at 55, Annabelle murmured, her fingers dancing over a holographic console. She wasn't looking at Ash, but her mind was brushing against his, checking his mental shielding. You're too calm, Ash. I'm not calm, Ash replied, standing up. The motion was fluid, predatory. I'm focused. Cynthia stepped into the light. She wore a tactical bodysuit under her trench coat, her usual elegance replaced by a sharp, military efficiency. The facility is disguised as a geothermal drilling rig. But the energy readings are off the charts. Vance isn't just hiding there, he's manufacturing. Manufacturing what? Karina asked, stretching her arms. She looked fierce, her mega ring gleaming in the low light. Gods, Ash said. The transport ramp lowered. The roar of the storm flooded the bay. Drop in 3, Cynthia commanded. Annabelle, keep the shroud tight. If they spot us before we breach the hull, they'll scuttle the data. 2, Karina said, activating her rollerblades. 1. They jumped. They didn't use parachutes. Cynthia's Garchomp caught her and Annabelle, diving toward the steel platform below. Ash plummeted in a freefall, Karina right beside him. 10 feet from the wet metal deck, Ash flared his aura. A pulse of blue force slammed into the air below him, acting as a cushion. He landed with a heavy, metallic thud, instantly rolling into a crouch. Karina landed beside him, her skates sparking as she braked. Clear, Ash whispered. Guards were already rushing toward them, armored security personnel with electric batons. Ash didn't draw a Pokemon. He didn't even slow down. He raised a hand, fingers splayed. Push. A wall of invisible force hit the guards. They were lifted off their feet and thrown backward into the stormy sea. Breach the door, Ash ordered. Karina spun, her leg glowing with the energy of a high-jump kick. She slammed her heel into the reinforced airlock. The steel groaned, buckled, and then exploded inward. They were in. The interior was a labyrinth of chrome and glass, bathed in sterile white light. It smelled of ozone and antiseptic. They moved as a single unit. Ash took point, his aura acting as radar. Karina watched the flanks. Cynthia and Annabelle covered the rear, Annabelle jamming the cameras with psychic static while Cynthia secured their digital footprint. This way, Ash said, taking a sharp left. The void is stronger down here. They descended deeper into the rig. The air grew hotter. The hum of machinery became a vibration that rattled their teeth. Finally, they reached the central chamber. It was a massive cathedral of engineering, dominating the center of the rig. In the middle of the room stood a containment tube 3 stories tall, filled with bubbling green fluid. Floating inside was a nightmare. It had the quadrupedal body of a beast, but its flesh was pale and synthetic. Metal plating was bolted directly into its spine. A cannon, similar to a Genesect's but larger, was grafted onto its head. But the worst part was the ring around its waist. A corrupted, mechanical imitation of Arceus's wheel. Standing on a catwalk overlooking the tube was Vance. Welcome, the Inquisitor's voice boomed over the PA system. I must admit, your efficiency is terrifying. You cut through my perimeter in less than 4 minutes. Shut it down, Vance, Ash yelled, his voice amplified by his own power. Whatever that thing is, it's suffering. Suffering is part of the synthesis, Vance replied coolly. You see, Ash, the problem with legendary Pokemon is that they have wills. They have egos. This is type. Null, perfected. Project Chimera. It has the power of a god, but the mind of a bullet. He pressed a button on his console. Let's see how it handles a sovereign. The glass tube shattered. Thousands of gallons of fluid crashed onto the floor, sweeping the team back. From the deluge, the creature emerged. It shook itself, the metal plates grinding together. Its eyes opened. They were blank white. "Kill," Vance commanded. The chimera roared. A digital, screeching sound that caused Annabelle to cry out and clutch her head. Psychic scream. Annabelle gasped. It's broadcasting noise. "Lucario, flash cannon," Ash ordered. Lucario materialized, firing a beam of steel energy. The chimera didn't dodge. It took the hit on its chest. The silver plating glowed, absorbing the light. Then, the ring around its waist shifted color, from silver to orange, fighting type. The chimera opened its maw and fired a focus blast the size of a truck. "Scatter!" Cynthia screamed. The blast hit the walkway where they had been standing, vaporizing the metal. Ash landed on a lower platform, skidding to a halt. "It has the RKS system," Cynthia shouted, analyzing the creature as Garchomp engaged it. "It changes type to counter the attacker. We can't hit it with Pokemon moves. It adapts instantly." Garchomp tried a Dragon Claw. The chimera shifted to Fairy type, taking 0 damage, and backhanded the dragon into a wall with crushing force. "It's invincible against standard attacks," Karina yelled, dodging a swipe of its claws. "Not against raw energy," Ash said. He stood up, his coat shedding water and fluid. "It adapts to types. Aura has no type." "Ash, no," Annabelle warned. "That thing is a siphon. If you engage it directly, it will drain you dry." "We don't have a choice." Ash sprinted forward. He didn't summon a weapon. He coated his fists in condensed, blue plasma. He leapt off the railing, meeting the chimera in midair. He punched the beast in the jaw. Crack. The impact was thunderous. The chimera's head snapped back. For the first time, it flinched. It hadn't expected the attack. It couldn't process the energy signature because it wasn't a move, it was just will. The chimera shrieked, swiping at Ash. Ash ducked, weaving under the claws, and drove a knee into the creature's ribs. He was fighting a monster 3 times his size, but he was faster. "Keep it distracted," Ash yelled, landing a flurry of blows on the creature's metallic neck. Cynthia, Karina, and Annabelle realized the plan instantly. "Lucario, assist him," Karina commanded. "Garchomp, harry the flanks," Cynthia ordered. "Espeon, psychic hold," Annabelle shouted. The Pokemon swarmed the beast, not to damage it, but to limit its movement. Espeon wrapped the chimera's legs in psychic energy. Garchomp bit down on its tail. Lucario parried its claws with Bone Rush. This gave Ash the opening. He jumped onto the chimera's back, grabbing the mechanical ring. He poured his aura into it, trying to overload the system. "Burn," Ash gritted out. The blue light intensified. The chimera thrashed wildly, bashing itself against the walls to dislodge him. Ash held on, his face contorted in effort. He could feel the machine fighting back, a cold, hungry darkness trying to eat his light. Warning. Vance's automated systems blared. Core overload imminent. "Get off him!" Vance screamed from the control room. "Use the null cannon." The chimera's head swiveled 180 degrees, unnatural and grotesque. The cannon faced Ash, point blank. It began to glow violet. "Ash!" Karina screamed. Ash couldn't let go. If he let go, the beast would recover. He had to break it. The cannon fired. Ash crossed his arms. He didn't have time to dodge. He took the blast directly. The violet beam engulfed him. "Ash!" The beam pushed him through the wall, blasting him out of the central chamber and hanging him over the abyss of the stormy sea below. He caught the edge of the jagged metal with one hand. He was smoking. His coat was gone. His shirt was burned away. His skin was red, blistering rapidly. He hung there, gasping, his energy reserves bottoming out. The chimera stalked toward the hole in the wall. It prepared to fire again. Ash looked up. He couldn't lift his other arm. He was done. Less than not yet. Greater than it wasn't his thought. A hand grabbed his wrist, then another. Karina and Annabelle were there, hauling him up onto the ledge. Cynthia stood behind them, her Garchomp unleashing a desperate hyper beam to buy them seconds. "You idiot," Karina sobbed, her hands glowing as she pulled him. "You absolute moron." They dragged him back. He collapsed against a bulkhead. He was shaking. The drain was too deep, he felt cold. I can't. Ash whispered. It's too strong. Shut up, Cynthia said. She knelt before him. She wasn't looking at his wounds, she was looking at his eyes. You are the sovereign. You don't fight alone. That is the point. She placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. Karina placed her hands on his shoulders. Annabelle placed her hands on his temples. Resonate, Annabelle commanded. It happened instantly. Ash gasped as 3 distinct rivers of power crashed into him. Karina's fire, hot, physical, aggressive. Annabelle's water, cool, expansive, limitless. Cynthia's earth, grounded, strategic, ancient. They weren't just lending him strength. They were pouring their very life force into his vessel. The pain in Ash's body vanished, replaced by a sensation of infinite capacity. He stood up. He didn't just glow blue anymore. The aura around him was a blinding, prismatic white, laced with gold and violet. The air around him distorted, the steel floor buckling under the sheer weight of the pressure he was emitting. The chimera roared, charging through the smoke. Ash turned. He didn't look like a boy. He looked like a star contained in human skin. He raised his right hand. The aura condensed, forming a shape. It wasn't a sphere. It lengthened, sharpened. A blade of pure energy, 10 feet long, materialized in his grip. End, Ash said. He swung. He was 20 feet away from the beast, but the blade extended. It sliced through the air with a sound like tearing fabric. The slash passed through the chimera's cannon, through the artificial ring, through the metal spine. The beast froze mid-step. A thin line of light appeared down its center. The chimera split in half. The 2 halves crashed to the floor, sparking and exploding. The reaction caused a chain detonation in the lab equipment. The rig is going down, Cynthia yelled, shielding her face from the heat. We need to move. Ash stood there, the energy blade fading. He swayed. The power left him as quickly as it had come, leaving him hollowed out. Karina was there instantly, ducking under his arm to support him. I've got you. Move your feet, catch him. They ran. The facility collapsed around them, explosions chasing their heels. They reached the transport bay just as the floor began to tilt into the sea. They scrambled onto the ship. Cynthia slammed the throttle forward. The transport shot out of the bay, spiraling into the storm, just seconds before the rig detonated in a massive fireball that illuminated the dark ocean. Inside the ship, it was quiet again. Ash lay on a medical cot, unconscious. His breathing was shallow. Annabelle sat by his head, monitoring his vitals. He stabilized, but the strain. His pathways are burned. He channeled enough energy to level a city. Karina sat on the floor, holding Ash's hand. She didn't say anything. She just squeezed his fingers, staring at the floor. Cynthia stood by the cockpit, watching the autopilot navigate them toward Alola. She looked back at the trio. We destroyed the prototype, Cynthia said softly. But Vance escaped. The pod launch was confirmed. It doesn't matter, Annabelle said, brushing a strand of hair from Ash's forehead. He knows now. He knows he can't beat Ash with a machine. Which means, Cynthia said grimly, he will try to find something that isn't a machine. The ship sped through the night, leaving the burning wreckage behind. But the victory felt heavy. They had won because they had merged their souls into one weapon. And the weapon was sleeping, fragile and broken, on the cot before them. Ash stirred slightly in his sleep, murmuring something. What? Karina leaned in. Sun. Ash whispered. The sun is dark. Cynthia looked out the viewport. The dawn was approaching, but the horizon looked strangely dim. A cold shiver ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. Rest, Sovereign, Cynthia whispered. The long night is just beginning. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Fracture in the Sky. Pony Island was supposed to be a sanctuary. The rugged, wild landscape of Alola's 4th island was steeped in natural energy, a place where civilization had barely left a footprint. The safe house was a converted research outpost built into the side of a canyon cliff, overlooking the vast expanse of the ocean. It was hidden, secure, and quiet. Too quiet. Ash sat on the edge of the wooden deck, his legs dangling over a 100-foot drop. 3 days had passed since the rig explosion. His physical wounds had healed. The burns on his arms were now just faint, silvery discolorations, but the internal damage lingered. He felt hollow, like a bell that had been rung too hard and couldn't stop vibrating. He held a cup of tea, but didn't drink it. He stared at the sky. It was noon, but the light was wrong. It was dim, filtered through a haze that wasn't cloud or pollution. It looked like an eternal twilight. "You're doing it again," a voice said. Ash didn't turn. He knew the footfalls. "Doing what?" "Looking at the world like you're responsible for its orbit." Annabelle sat down beside him. She wore loose island clothes, looking far more relaxed than she had in the snow or the storm. But her eyes were watchful. "The light is fading, Annabelle," Ash murmured. "It's been getting dimmer every hour since we left the rig." "Atmospheric disturbance from the explosion," Annabelle suggested, though her tone lacked conviction. "No, it's being eaten." Ash took a sip of the cold tea. "I can feel it. Something up there is hungry." He put the cup down and looked at his hands. "And I'm empty. I tapped into you, Karina, and Cynthia. I used you like batteries. If I do that again..." "If you do that again, we'll be there," Annabelle interrupted firmly. She reached out, placing her hand over his. "Do not apologize for survival, Ash. The resonance isn't parasitic, it's symbiotic. When you draw from us, we feel what you feel. Your resolve, your fear, your love." Ash looked at her, startled. "Love?" Annabelle smiled, a soft, enigmatic expression. "You love this world, Ash. That's why you fight. It's a powerful fuel." Before Ash could respond, the glass door behind them slid open. Karina walked out, wearing workout gear, sweating slightly. "Training time," she announced, tossing a towel at Ash's head. "Stop flirting with the psychic and come get punched in the face. Your body is stiffening up." Ash caught the towel, cracking a small smile. "You just want an excuse to kick me. Maybe. Or maybe I need to make sure your reflexes aren't fried." She grinned, but her eyes were serious. "Come on." The beach. 10 minutes. The sparring session on the black sand beach was brutal. Karina didn't hold back. She moved like a blur, her strikes precise and heavy. Ash blocked, parried, and dodged, his body moving on instinct. Thud, thud, crack. He caught a high kick, sliding backward in the sand, and swept her remaining leg. Karina flipped in midair, landing cat-like, and lunged again. "Stop thinking," Karina yelled, throwing a flurry of jabs. "You're hesitating. You're afraid to use aura to reinforce your muscles." "I don't want to burn out." Ash grunted, blocking a strike that rattled his bones. "You won't burn out if you stop fighting the flow." She swept his guard aside and landed a palm strike on his chest. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to knock the wind out of him. Ash stumbled back, falling onto the sand. He lay there, staring up at the darkening sky. Karina stood over him, hands on her hips. She was breathing hard, her skin glistening. She looked down at him, her expression softening. She offered a hand. "You're scared," she said. Not a question. Ash took her hand. She pulled him up, but didn't let go. She pulled him into a hug, fierce and tight. "We aren't glass, Ash," she whispered into his chest. "You don't have to treat us like we'll break if you lean on us." Ash rested his chin on her head, closing his eyes. He smelled the sea salt and sweat, felt the steady thrum of her heartbeat. It grounded him. The hollow feeling in his chest filled up, just a little. "I know," he said. I've never had to share the load before. Not like this." "Well, get used to it," she muttered, squeezing him once more before pulling away. "Because whatever is coming, you can't solo it." That evening, the crisis broke. They were gathered in the main command room. Cynthia was on a holographic call with the Alolan professors, Kukui and Burnett. "The readings are global," Kukui was saying, his face grave. "Luminosity has dropped by 15% worldwide in the last 6 hours. Crops are responding. Solar-powered tech is failing. It's not a cloud layer. The photons are simply vanishing before they hit the atmosphere." "Is it necrozma?" Cynthia asked, her fingers drumming on the table. "We think so," Burnett replied. "But the readings are wrong. The ultra wormholes aren't opening randomly. They're converging on one point." "Where?" Ash asked, stepping into the frame. "Right above you," Kukui said. "Pony Island. The altar of the sun." The room went silent. Suddenly, the screens flickered and died. The lights in the outpost went out. "Backup generator," Cynthia barked. The emergency red lights kicked on. But outside, it was pitch black. Not night, an absolute, suffocating void. "He's here," Ash said. A voice boomed from the sky. It wasn't telepathy. It was a broadcast, amplified by technology so massive it rattled the canyon walls. "Ash, Ketchum." It was Vance. Ash ran to the balcony. High above the island, a massive airship hovered. It was sleek, black, and shaped like a dagger. But above the ship, in the tear of the atmosphere, was something else. A prism. A dragon made of broken light. Necrozma. It wasn't the blinding ultra form yet. It was the starved, black crystalline form. It hung in the sky like a jagged wound, sucking the light from the stars. Vance's voice echoed again. "I told you, boy. The gods are drawn to power. Your little display at the rig, it lit a beacon. You woke the devourer." Ash gripped the railing. "What have you done, Vance?" "I haven't done anything," Vance replied, his voice sounding surprisingly weary. "I tried to containment seal it. I tried to kill it. My fleet is gone. It ate them. It ate the lasers. It ate the engines." The airship above listed to the side, smoke pouring from its engines. "It wants aura," Vance said. "It wants you. If you don't surrender yourself to it, it will strip this planet down to a frozen rock to find the energy it needs." "He's insane," Karina hissed, standing beside Ash. "He's trying to bargain with a natural disaster." "It's not bargaining," Annabelle said, her eyes wide with horror as she scanned the sky. "He's offering a sacrifice." The Necrozma shifted. It turned its eyeless face toward the canyon. Toward Ash. It screeched. The sound shattered glass for miles. The outpost windows exploded inward. Ash covered his ears, but the sound wasn't just auditory, it was a psychic spike. He felt the creature's hunger. It was bottomless, infinite. "It's coming down," Cynthia shouted. "We need to move to the altar. It's a nexus point. We can channel the island's energy there." "We can't fight that thing," Karina yelled. "It ate a fleet." "We don't fight it," Ash said. He stood up, shaking the glass from his hair. His eyes were glowing again. The Sovereign was back. "We feed it," Ash said. "What?" Cynthia stopped. "It's hungry," Ash said, looking at the dragon of darkness. "It's pain. It lost its light. If we fight it, it just absorbs the attacks. We have to give it what it wants." "Ash," Annabelle grabbed his arm. "If you try to fill that thing with your own aura, you will die. It's a black hole. You are a candle." "I'm not a candle," Ash said. He looked at the three women. "I'm the match. We need a bonfire." He pointed to the altar of the sun, barely visible on the distant ridge. "The island guardians," Ash said. "Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, Tapu Bulu, Tapu Fini. They are pure energy. If I can resonate with them, and you three anchor me, we can channel the Z power of the entire region." "That's theoretically possible," Cynthia muttered, her mind racing. "But the strain on your body would be catastrophic." "The alternative is the sun never rises again," Ash said. The airship above exploded. Necrozma had swiped a claw through it, casually, like swatting a fly. Debris rained down into the ocean. Vance was gone. The antagonist who had hunted them was nothing more than an appetizer for the real threat. Necrozma began to descend. The gravity on the island shifted. Rocks began to float into the air. Ash jumped onto Charizard's back. "To the altar," he commanded. Cynthia, Karina, and Annabelle released their flyers. Garchomp, Braviary, Salamence loaned. They took to the sky. As they flew toward the altar, the island guardians appeared. They didn't attack. They sensed the crisis. They flew alongside Ash, four deities of color streaking through the gray dark. Ash landed at the center of the altar. The stone platform hummed with power. "Positions." Ash yelled over the roaring wind. Karina took the north pillar. "Vanguard ready." Annabelle took the east. Anchor secure. Cynthia took the west. Strategy aligned. Ash stood in the center. He raised both hands to the sky. "Necrozma," he screamed. The dragon of light paused. It hovered over the altar, a terrifying, geometric horror. "You want light," Ash roared, his aura flaring so bright it illuminated the entire mountain range. "Come and get it." Necrozma Dove. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The eclipse war. The sky was falling. That was the only way to describe the sensation. As Necrozma descended, the very fabric of reality above Pony Island began to warp. The darkness wasn't just an absence of light, it was a physical weight, pressing down with the force of a collapsing star. Ash stood at the center of the altar of the sun, his arms raised. The wind ripped at his clothes, tearing the fabric, but he didn't move. He was the lightning rod. It's too fast. Karina screamed from the north pillar. She was glowing gold, her body acting as a physical conduit for the energy Ash was drawing in. The pressure, it's crushing. Hold the line. Cynthia's voice cut through the roar, sharp and commanding. From the west pillar, she was coordinating the defensive screen. Her Garchomp and Lucario were firing hyper beams into the sky, not to hit Necrozma, but to disrupt the gravitational waves it was emitting. If the altar cracks, the focus is lost. It's locking onto him. Annabelle cried out from the east. Her eyes were squeezed shut, blood trickling from her nose. She was telepathically shielding Ash's mind from the alien, prism-shattering screech of the entity. Ash, it's going to try to consume your soul directly. Let it try, Ash roared. He closed his eyes. Less than Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, Tapu Bulu, Tapu Fini, greater than. He didn't speak the names, he felt them. The 4 island guardians were circling the altar, weaving a net of Z-power. Ash reached out with his aura, grabbing the threads of their energy. It was like grabbing live power lines. His body seized. White fire erupted from his skin. The pain was absolute. Every nerve ending in his body fired at once. He felt his muscles tearing, his bones vibrating to the point of fracture. But he didn't let go. Resonate. He pulled the energy into himself, mixing it with his own aura, and then, he pushed it out. A beam of pure, concentrated light shot up from the altar. It hit Necrozma dead center. The dragon of darkness shrieked. But it wasn't a scream of pain. It was a scream of gluttony. Necrozma opened its maw and bit the beam. It's eating it. Karina yelled. It's eating the attack. It's not an attack. Ash shouted back, his voice distorted, sounding like 3 people speaking at once. It's dinner. Keep pouring. Ash forced more power out. The beam widened, turning from blue to gold to a blinding, prismatic rainbow. He was feeding the beast. He was trying to fill a bottomless pit. But it wasn't enough. Necrozma grew larger. The black crystals on its body began to crack, revealing blinding light underneath. It was transforming. Ultra Necrozma was beginning to wake up. And as it woke, it generated heat. The air around the altar instantly flashed to plasma. The stone began to melt. The temperature is spiking, Cynthia warned, checking her tactical display. Ash, you're going to incinerate. I can take it. No, you can't. Karina abandoned her post. She didn't run. She skated on the melting stone, launching herself toward Ash. Karina, get back, Ash yelled. She ignored him. She slammed into his back, wrapping her arms around his chest. Lucario, aura synchronization, she screamed. Her Mega Lucario leapt from the shadows, placing its paws on Ash's chest. Karina, Ash, and Lucario became a circuit. Karina didn't just lend him energy, she took the heat. She siphoned the excess thermal buildup into her own body and vented it outward. Golden flames erupted from her skin, shielding Ash from the worst of the burn. I am the vanguard, she grit out, her skin searing. I break the wave. Karina, Ash gasped, feeling her agony through the link. Shut up and focus, she snarled against his ear. The beam intensified. Necrozma was pushed back 100 feet. But the entity adapted. It fired a prismatic laser, a beam of destruction capable of destroying a region. It's firing back, Annabelle screamed. The laser came down. Reflect. Annabelle extended her hands. A massive, psychic barrier, purple and geometric, materialized above the altar. It was the combined power of Annabelle, her Espeon, and Alakazam. The laser hit the shield. The sound was deafening. The barrier cracked. I can't. Hold it. Annabelle fell to her knees, the weight of a god pressing on her mind. Cynthia, Ash yelled. On it. Cynthia threw a Pokeball. Spiritomb. Togekiss. Melodic. Defensive formation Delta. Her team emerged, layering light screens and protects under Annabelle's barrier. Cynthia herself ran to Annabelle, pulling the psychic to her feet. Together, Cynthia ordered, "We reinforce the shield." Ash and Karina handle the spear. The battle had become a stalemate of cosmic proportions. Above, the shield held by Cynthia and Annabelle groaned under the laser. Below, the spear of light driven by Ash and Karina pushed up into the beast's maw. But Ash was fading. The human body has limits. Even a sovereign's body. His vision was tunneling. The edges of his consciousness were fraying. He felt himself slipping away, dissolving into the light. It's too much. I can't fill it. It's infinite. The despair hit him. If he failed, they all died. Karina would burn. Annabelle would shatter. Cynthia would be crushed. Less than Ash. Greater than. A voice. Not Annabelle's. Not Karina's. It was ancient. He saw a flash of memory. A tree. A blue crystal. A small, pink creature playing in the leaves. Mew. And behind it, something larger. A silhouette of a deer-like creature in a dimension of glass. Arceus. The original one, Ash whispered. He realized the mistake. He was trying to feed Necrozma with power. But Necrozma didn't just want power. It wanted light, the specific frequency of the sun that gave life to Alola. Solgaleo, Ash gasped. Lunala. He looked at the altar. He didn't have the legendaries. But he had their residue. The altar was soaked in their history. Annabelle. Ash projected his thought. Drop the shield. Are you insane? Cynthia yelled. We'll be vaporized. Trust me, Ash screamed. Drop it on my mark. Karina, when the shield drops, I need you to break the connection. Jump clear. No. Karina tightened her grip. I'm not leaving you. You have to. I need to become the vessel. Alone. Ash, do it. Ash flared his aura, a violent, repulsive pulse that knocked Karina and Lucario backward, skidding them to the edge of the altar. Now, Annabelle and Cynthia dropped the shield. The prismatic laser hammered down. Ash didn't block it. He opened his arms. He let the laser hit him. For a microsecond, he died. His heart stopped. His brain activity flatlined. The energy was too vast. But then, the Sovereign kicked in. The latent ability to bond with any Pokémon, to understand any heart, activated. Ash didn't fight the laser. He accepted it. He became one with the attack. His body turned into a silhouette of pure white light. He floated up. He wasn't flying. Gravity simply ceased to apply to him. He rose into the beam, swimming upstream against the river of destruction. He reached Necrozma. The giant dragon loomed over him, a terrifying construct of gold and black. Ash hovered before its face. He was a speck of dust against a hurricane. You're lonely, Ash whispered. The words carried through the vacuum. You're cold. Necrozma paused. The laser stopped. It looked at the boy who was made of light. Ash reached out and touched the dragon's nose. Share, Ash said. He didn't give his energy away this time. He connected Necrozma to the planet. He acted as the bridge. He became the filament in the light bulb. He channeled the aura of the entire Earth. Every person, every Pokémon, every blade of grass, through his small, fragile body, and into the dragon. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was a donation. Necrozma gasped. Light flooded its cracks. The black armor shattered. Ultra Necrozma was reborn. A creature of blinding, magnificent light unfurled its wings. It roared, not in hunger, but in joy. The sky turned from black to a brilliant, midday blue in an instant. The darkness was scrubbed from the atmosphere. Ash smiled. Go, he whispered. Necrozma looked at him one last time, a nod of acknowledgement from a god to a king. Then, it shot upward, streaking into space to return light to its own dimension. Ash was left floating in the silent, blue sky. He looked down at the altar. He saw Karina screaming his name. He saw Annabelle crying. He saw Cynthia staring up in awe. He felt light. That's it, Ash thought. It's done. The light inside him faded. Gravity remembered him. Ash fell. He tumbled from the sky, a limp ragdoll, plummeting toward the stone altar thousands of feet below. Ash. Karina leapt. She didn't think. She jumped off the altar, diving into the air. Charizard. She screamed. But Charizard was too far away. Latios. Annabelle yelled, summoning the Eon Pokémon. Latios streaked across the sky, faster than a jet. It caught Karina midair. Dive. Karina ordered. Catch him. They dove. The wind roared. Ash was falling fast, terminal velocity. Karina reached out. Faster. Latios tucked its wings and accelerated. They closed the gap. 50 feet. 20 feet. 10. Karina grabbed Ash's hand. The impact of the catch nearly dislocated her shoulder, but she didn't let go. She pulled him into her arms, wrapping him tight as Latios pulled up, skimming the waves of the ocean before ascending back to the altar. They landed on the stone. Karina rolled, shielding Ash's body with hers. They came to a stop. Ash, she whispered, frantically checking him. Ash, breathe, please, breathe. Cynthia and Annabelle ran over. He wasn't breathing. His skin was gray. His heart was silent. His heart stopped. Karina sobbed, pumping his chest. Come on. Don't you dare. You don't get to win and leave. Annabelle fell to her knees. She placed her hands on his head. His mind is quiet, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. He gave it all away. The bridge burned out. No, Cynthia said. Her voice was shaking. He is the sovereign. He commands energy. He doesn't run out. She placed her hand on his chest, over Karina's. Annabelle joined them. Give it back, Cynthia ordered. We gave it to him before. We give it back now. Resonance, Annabelle choked out. They closed their eyes. They poured everything they had left. Their love, their fear, their life, into the silent boy. Nothing happened. The wind whistled over the altar. The sun shone brightly, mocking them. Ash, Karina screamed, hitting his chest. Thump. A weak, stuttering beat. Thump thump. Ash gasped. His eyes flew open. They weren't glowing. They were just brown. Warm, honey brown. He coughed, arching his back, dragging air into his starving lungs. Ash. Karina collapsed on top of him, burying her face in his neck, sobbing uncontrollably. Annabelle covered her mouth, trembling. Cynthia let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for a year, slumping back onto the stone. Ash blinked, looking up at the blue sky. He felt the weight of Karina on him, the hands of Annabelle and Cynthia on his arms. He lifted a heavy hand, resting it on Karina's hair. Hey, he rasped. His voice was wrecked, barely a whisper. Did the sun come up? Karina laughed, a wet, broken sound. She lifted her head, tears dripping onto his face. Yes, you idiot. The sun came up. Ash smiled weakly. Good. He looked at the three women surrounding him. His vanguard, his anchor, his strategist. I think, Ash whispered, his eyes closing again as exhaustion claimed him, I'm going to sleep for a week. You earned it, King, Cynthia murmured softly. Ash drifted off, not into the void, but into a peaceful, dreamless sleep, held safe in the center of his circle. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Sovereign's Dawn. The hospital room in Pallet Town was too small for the number of flowers that had been delivered. They spilled off the bedside table, lined the windowsill, and were piled in the corners. Bouquets from gym leaders, crates of berries from professors, and official commendations from the Pokémon League. Ash Ketchum ignored them all. He sat on the edge of the bed, dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans. He was staring out the window at the rolling hills of his hometown. It had been 2 weeks since the Eclipse War. 2 weeks of coma, followed by 3 days of recovery. His body felt different. The constant, thrumming pressure of his aura was gone. It wasn't that he had lost his power, it was that the power had settled. It no longer felt like a raging river trying to burst a dam. It felt like a deep, still ocean. He didn't need to flex to feel it. It was just there. The door opened. Delia Ketchum walked in, holding a tray of food. She looked tired, aged by worry, but her smile was bright. You're up, she said, setting the tray down. The doctors said you should rest for another day. I've rested enough, Mom, Ash said, standing up. He walked over and hugged her. She squeezed him tightly, burying her face in his shoulder. She was shorter than him now. He realized with a pang of guilt how much he had grown while he was away fighting gods. They're waiting for you outside, Delia said, pulling back and smoothing his shirt. All 3 of them. They haven't left the property since we brought you home. Ash smiled. I know. I can feel them. He walked out of the room, down the stairs, and onto the porch of the Ketchum residence. The morning sun was warm. Mr. Mime was sweeping the walkway. Sitting on the wooden railing of the fence was Karina. She was tossing an apple up and down, her Lucario sitting at her feet. Leaning against the oak tree in the yard was Annabelle, reading a book, though her eyes weren't moving across the page. Sitting at the patio table with a laptop and a cup of coffee was Cynthia. They all looked up as the screen door creaked shut. For a moment, nobody spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavy with everything they had survived. Karina was the first to move. She hopped off the fence, walking over to him. She stopped a foot away, inspecting him. "You look less glowy," she noted. "I feel less explosive," Ash replied. She grinned, then punched him lightly in the shoulder. "Good. High-maintenance boyfriends are exhausting." Ash blinked. "Boyfriends?" Karina raised an eyebrow. "Do you have an objection?" "Because I saved your life in freefall. That usually seals the deal in Kalos." Before Ash could answer, Cynthia closed her laptop. "I believe the term, boyfriend, is insufficient for the geopolitical entity you've become, Ash." She walked over, her heels clicking on the pavement. She stood beside Karina. "The League Council has been reorganized. Vance's faction has been purged. The Nullification Bureau is dismantled. But the vacuum of power is significant." "What are you saying, Cynthia?" Ash asked. "I'm saying they want to offer you a position," she said. "Not champion. Something higher. An overseer. Someone who deals with threats that badges can't solve." "A sovereign," Annabelle said softly, joining the circle. Ash looked at them. "I'm not a ruler. I'm a trainer." "You haven't been just a trainer for a long time," Annabelle said. She reached out, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. Her touch was cool, familiar. "You commanded Regigigas. You fed Necrozma. You united us. The world doesn't need another champion, Ash. It needs a guardian." Ash looked at the horizon. He thought about the journey. The mistakes. The losses. And the moment in the sky when he had let go of everything to save the light. He looked back at the women. Karina, the vanguard. The fire that kept him moving. Annabelle, the anchor. The water that kept him sane. Cynthia, the strategist. The earth that gave him purpose. "I can't do it alone," Ash said. "That's the point," Karina said, stepping closer and sliding her hand into his. "You're stuck with us. Deal with it." Cynthia smiled, a rare, soft expression. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "We have already discussed the terms. We are amenable to the arrangement." "Arrangement?" Ash raised an eyebrow. "Sharing," Annabelle clarified with a small, mischievous smile. "It turns out saving the world creates bonds that are difficult to break. None of us are willing to walk away. So, we walk together." Ash felt a warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't aura. It was simple, human happiness. "Okay," Ash said. He squeezed Karina's hand. He nodded at Cynthia and Annabelle. "We walked together." 6 months later, the location was the Tree of Beginning. The ancient rock formation stood tall against the setting sun. It was a place of power, sacred to Aura Guardians. Ash stood on a high ridge, wearing a new outfit. It was tactical but regal, a long coat of deep blue with gold trim, reinforced boots, and fingerless gloves. Lucario stood by his side, looking stoic. Behind him, a small base of operations had been set up. It wasn't a military camp, it looked more like a home. Karina was sparring with her Lucario on the lower plateau. Annabelle was meditating near the crystal formations. Cynthia was inside the command tent, coordinating with the G-men. Ash took a deep breath. The air here was clean. "Report," Ash said, speaking into his comms. "Sector 4 is clear," Karina's voice crackled in his ear. "No sign of the remnant cells." "Psychic web is stable," Annabelle reported. "Global threat levels are green." "Meeting with the Unova delegation is in 1 hour," Cynthia added. "Don't be late, Sovereign." Ash chuckled. "I'm never late. I'm just strategically delayed." He looked down at his hand. He focused. A small sphere of blue aura formed in his palm. It was perfectly spherical, stable, and silent. He tossed it up and caught it. He wasn't afraid of it anymore. It was just a part of him. He turned back toward the camp. He saw Karina waving at him. He saw Annabelle smiling. He saw Cynthia waiting at the entrance. He wasn't the boy from Pallet Town anymore. He was something else, something more. But as he walked back to the women who held his heart and his soul, Ash Ketchum realized he was exactly where he was meant to be. He was the king, and his court was waiting. "Let's go, Pikachu," Ash said. Pikachu leapt onto his shoulder. Pika. Ash walked into the sunset, not toward an ending, but toward the dawn of a new age. Chapter 7 End.